Animal Crossing might be in a really weird place right now, but I think people often forget how massive of a game series Animal Crossing really is. Let's look at this icon right here. If this would represent 1 million people, then this is approximately how many units Bayonetta 3 sold since its release in 2023, around 1.1 million units. Now, let's take the same icon for 1 million people and apply it to Animal Crossing, 48.2 million units. Here are some other examples: Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Mario Odyssey, even Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And throughout the entire life of the Nintendo Switch, only one game outsold Animal Crossing, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. While it might seem like Animal Crossing has fallen into a little bit of obscurity compared to its massive popularity it had during its peak launch time of New Horizons, I think a lot of people forget how much of a legacy it left behind. Matter of fact, in later years, Nintendo actually blamed Animal Crossing for the reason why overall game sales for the Nintendo Switch were lower that year, because they didn't have the giant spike that Animal Crossing had caused. And even though it's been over 5 years since Animal Crossing New Horizons released, I think moving forward, Animal Crossing is probably in the best position it's ever been in for future success. Let's take a deeper look. Around the early 2000s, one of my biggest gaming obsessions was Driver and Driver 2 on the PlayStation. I liked these games because they felt immersive. They gave me this little simulated world I could live in, and mind you, this was before the days of Grand Theft Auto, so this was like the most realistic thing. Even if the main point of the game was just driving cars around, I'll admit it, I was that weird kid who tried to obey traffic laws in a video game. I did all of it, and it didn't last long once the cops got on me, but still, I was innovative. I was trying my best. But then one day, my brother, who worked at a video game store, brought over this game I'd never heard of before, Animal Crossing. Now, from the name, I thought it was probably a driving game, because it sounds like, you know, those things you see on the road warning you of like animals potentially crossing the road. That's not actually the case. Now, he already had his own save file, which played into how the original Animal Crossing game was, and he let my other brother and I keep the disc for a couple of weeks with his memory card, and right away, the game kind of blew my mind. The fact that we each could have our own house in the same town without having to do new saves was really cool, and the whole day and night thing being synced to real time was like brand new video game tech. I think this is really relevant because even at a younger age, I already kind of understood the difference between objective games, stuff like Donkey Kong 64 or even Pokemon where you had clear goals, and these other kinds of games that felt more like simulations. And that's what Animal Crossing was. Simulated life in a village full of animals. Nowadays, what surprises me though in this weird way is that back then, it didn't feel that different from Driver. Sure, these two games couldn't look or play more differently. I mean, look at this. But they both gave me the sense of being inside a living world where I could just exist, whether it was cruising the streets of a city or like, I don't know, fishing. In a weird way, it kind of scratched the same itch of immersion that I guess I was looking for when I was, I don't know, 7 or 8. And I think that's probably why Animal Crossing stuck with me the way that it did. So is that relevant? I'll answer that question in just a second. But first, we actually have a sponsor, Infinity Nikki. This is an open world dress-up adventure where you explore bright, whimsical worlds, collect outfits, and even use those outfits for special abilities. One of the standout features is the dye system, where you can recolor Nikki's hair, gowns, and more to make your own unique style, then share and import designs with other players. People are even recreating looks from other games, which is kind of wild. There was a new update, version 1.9, that has a ton of fresh content. You got a whole music season with Nikki's first ever themed outfits, each coming with their own special performance ability, making every look feel alive in a different way. And along with the new update, players can enjoy this beautiful French song that perfectly captures the music season's atmosphere as featured in the latest official trailer. They also launched the home system, which gives Nikki her own floating island you can build, decorate, and invite friends to visit. It's like your own personal cozy sanctuary right inside the game. Compared to other games, this game's designed for both skilled builders and casual players. You get deep creative tools like 360-degree editing, scaling, plus easy pre-built blueprints and shareable templates. And on top of that, the home system connects seamlessly with the open world adventure. Outfit abilities unlock magical home interactions, things like auto-harvesting flowers or levitating rotating furniture. It's a lot of stuff. So your exploration rewards actually weave into the daily life of the game and make the whole world feel meaningful and connected. And yes, they even teamed up with Stardew Valley. Remember those little forest spirits? The Junimos make an appearance here, and there's an exclusive crossover outfit, and there's this chicken gramophone feature. If you want a relaxing open world adventure with tons of creativity, you should just try out Infinity Nikki. It's free. Click on the link in the description or the pinned comment to download and start exploring today. That's like my special link, so check it out. Okay, back to the video. I think a lot of people forget how relevant Animal Crossing really is still, especially nowadays. Animal Crossing still regularly appears front and center in Nintendo's lineup of popular characters. Like if you look at its official retail stores, you'll see characters from Mario, from Zelda, from Pokemon. But nowadays, Animal Crossing, surprisingly enough, has kind of elevated itself to becoming a pillar under Nintendo. For a non-Mario IP, it gets a consistent level of merchandising presence. Like, let's look at the new Nintendo flagship store that opened up in San Francisco's Union Square. Look at the themed windows here. You see other Nintendo characters, but sure enough, Isabelle is among those characters, which kind of reinforces Animal Crossing's place as an important piece for Nintendo's overall portfolio. And I don't think this is just like residual hype from New Horizons' success. Look at the statue they have inside of Isabelle, Timmy, and Tommy. Isabelle's actually wearing her Animal Crossing New Leaf clothes, not her New Horizons clothes that are the updated look. They actually chose to revert her back to her old design for a new store, probably to future-proof this statue for future Animal Crossing games, and not necessarily have her stylized in the whole island getaway theme that New Horizons had. But that's not where Animal Crossing's relevance outside of the games themselves actually ends. Throughout the past couple of years, Animal Crossing's had quite a bit of a presence through aquarium tours. This was something that started in Japan, but later made its way to Seattle and then nationally and internationally. And they're just crossover events with different aquariums that have special signage and different things connecting stuff to Animal Crossing and like stamps and like photo ops and stuff at some of them. And then on top of that, and on top of the massive merchandising effort Animal Crossing has, we've seen collaborations beyond just like the initial launch of Animal Crossing New Horizons. The Lego set that started in 2024 has continued to grow with Animal Crossing, and it just shows that overall, Nintendo's trying to show an ongoing investment, even if there isn't a new game releasing in the immediate future. This same sort of appreciation from Nintendo is not the same type of treatment that other Nintendo IPs get. I mean, look at Star Fox. Nintendo does not do stuff with Star Fox. Animal Crossing isn't just thriving in the digital sense. It's definitely woven into Nintendo's real-world strategy across multiple touchpoints. Flagship stores, touring exhibits, museum spaces, and these types of lifestyle partnerships. I mean, there's a Crocs crossover coming up. Even when there's not a new release, Nintendo keeps the brand front and center, which kind of solidifies its status as a truly first-class Nintendo citizen with visibility and vitality that many other franchises simply don't enjoy the same level of. When I was a kid, I had a copy of Pokemon Sapphire for my Game Boy Advance. And man, did Pokemon Sapphire just hit completely different. And sure, the Pokemon collecting, the battling, the training, all of it were a part of why I liked the game, but there was one extra angle that made Pokemon Sapphire specifically extra special to me. And I think it was the world building. Across most Pokemon games, the writing is usually really well done, and it builds this world out further. With Pokemon Sapphire, the game's just a 2D game at this point, but it felt so alive and real, and they left so much for the imagination that the world felt like it had even more depth than what we could actually see. My headcanon about the Pokemon world was bigger than the constraints of what Pokemon Sapphire told me existed in the world. Third generation of Pokemon also introduced something known as secret bases, a feature that's often forgotten about, but back in the day, you could essentially find a specific location in the overworld of Pokemon, open it up using a TM or a secret move, and if you liked the layout, you could make it your own personal secret base, which then in turn you could decorate. I remember obsessing over this little feature in my Pokemon Sapphire game because I wanted to find the perfect location for a secret base that I could then call my own home. In my own headcanon, I needed a location where my character lived and existed in the world. However, if you just looked at all the houses in the game, besides your own house, there's always always someone else living in a house. You can't just occupy it and be like, this is my house, in your own headcanon at least. And I spent a lot of time considering each secret base location and thought about how close it was to the city, or if this was an area I would want to live in. Did any of this have to do anything with the game itself? No. But I think you can see what I'm getting to with this anecdote. Animal Crossing is an interesting series because the game leans heavily into this idea of headcanon. On the surface, the Animal Crossing world isn't really all that impressive at first. It's actually not necessarily even a place you would want to live most of the time when you're like, setting things up. But the mystique that is developed the more you immerse yourself in the game and the more you play the game gives you this little spark of intention, which really makes Animal Crossing stand out. Because while sure, you might not want to live in this location, you want to build the location into a place that you could want to live. As you get more familiar with the game, the villagers, the layout of your town, the more freedom that you were given in the game, and the more familiar you get with your game. Animal Crossing isn't a game that tells you how you should feel about things, it lets you experience things however they may come. And once players are brought into the game and they're able to experience this and build out their own headcanon, all of a sudden the motive isn't necessarily about getting from point A to point B in the game, it's about building something unique that you appreciate. The writing of the different villagers is written in a way that's a lot deeper than what you would get from an NPC in a different game, and even though it might seem void of anything necessary for the gameplay, their existence builds out that lore and that larger world in the player's head. If they can ramble on about what they saw on television and Maglev Mike's romance going off the rails, all of a sudden your imagination leads you to think, well, if Maglev Mike's relationship is off the rails, what other television series do these villagers watch? What other interests do they have? And while we might not ever have those details explicitly written to us, the fact that we can think about those things, look at the decorations in their own houses, read into the things that are said, it really paints this larger-than-life world that Animal Crossing actually has, even if it's not explicitly pointed out in the games. Listen, as a kid, I was pretty lucky when it came to the Nintendo DS. Now, I did have the big, chunky silver one, the so-called DS Fat, before, the DS Lite had come out. Because I was an early adopter, I had to live with those growing pains. And sure, at the time, I didn't care that it looked like a folding brick, but being an early adopter meant that on Christmas 2005, I got my hands on Animal Crossing Wild World. Booting it up for the first time, I was floored that I could take Animal Crossing with me anywhere. On the bus, in the car, under the blankets when I was supposed to be asleep. It felt like I had a whole town in my pocket, and to kid me, this is like some futuristic next level world-changing type of technology here. My mind was blown with the fact that I wasn't required to wear a hat anymore, because in the GameCube version you always had to wear a hat. It was like I finally was free. I was liberated from having to have something on my head. And I do remember some things from playing on the DS version of the game that were just, core memories of mine now. Like I had to have a crushing lesson in patience and what patience meant, because when Tom Nook closed his store to upgrade on a weekend when I had no school was really difficult. I was pacing around in my little Nintendo DS town. My pockets were full of bugs and fish and fruit, and I wanted to sell them, but I couldn't sell them because how am I going to sell them when the store is closed? It was like, come on, Nook, why are you doing this remodel now? I'm trying to be financially responsible and pay off my crippling mortgage. It was a rough time, but a memorable time. A few years later, things even got a little weirder when I figured out I could play online through the Nintendo DS Wi-Fi connection. If I went online to Nintendo forums, I could make friends with random strangers as a 10-year-old. The problem was I didn't understand how to connect to the internet through the DS at first, because at the time I needed this thing called a WEP key, which sounded like something you'd need a secret decoder for or something. I remember trying to figure it out on my family computer, couldn't figure that out. I was typing random numbers into my DS, convinced I was hacking the Pentagon or something like that. Eventually, I think I figured out if I went to the router program, I could find the WEP key printed in there. Or was it printed on the actual router itself? I don't remember exactly, but I eventually figured it out, and I made some friends online, and I visited their towns back in the day. Fortunately enough, I didn't meet anyone too creepy. I'm sure they were out there, but I mostly ran into people who were probably around my own age also figuring out their WEP key and got online like I did. Looking back, the DS era was truly a wonderful era. Clunky hardware aside, eventually I did get a DS Lite, and that thing was awesome. Confusing internet setups aside, and me stressing out over Tom Nook's work schedule for remodeling things aside, it was a magical experience. Animal Crossing wasn't just a game anymore to me, it was like an alternate life that I could carry around with me whenever I felt like logging in. And I think that that's important. Now, the reason Animal Crossing has been elevated in Nintendo's portfolio, and the reason why Nintendo treats Animal Crossing different, even if, the game content's been real slow, is because I think Animal Crossing is really, really crucial to Nintendo reaching a large portion of their audience, surprisingly. Animal Crossing is more than just like a quirky life sim game with talking animals. It's been one of Nintendo's most important vessels for reaching a side of the gaming audience that traditional franchises might not actually normally speak to. Back in the 2000s, the core group that would appreciate a game like Animal Crossing would usually get lumped into some sort of label like casual gamers. The people that played Animal Crossing, Sims, Nintendogs maybe. I don't think casual gaming really feels like the right term, or a casual gamer. A lot of people recently started using the term cozy gaming audience. I guess that's an okay term. I'm not sure if that's the right term that I feel like fits it either. I think if we borrowed the term that's commonly used in anime or manga and started calling these slice of life games, I feel like that more accurately fits it than necessarily cozy. I don't hate cozy either though. And while games like this are definitely not exclusively for women, the series has historically leaned towards attracting more female-skewed demographics compared to Nintendo's other heavy hitters. The audience overlap is vital here because it means that Animal Crossing brings people into Nintendo's ecosystem who might not care about catching every Nintendo Direct or lining up for Metroid Prime 4. They might pick up Mario Kart if they already have a Nintendo Switch, but I don't know if they would go out of their way necessarily just for Mario Kart. It's not the case for everyone, but it's definitely a percentage of the player base that really enjoys Animal Crossing and interacts with Animal Crossing. There are casual Nintendo fans like me who enjoy anything Nintendo, but also really loves Animal Crossing too. But that's not every Animal Crossing fan, if that makes sense. And I think the reason that these games resonate well with other people that might not see themselves as the traditional core gamer isn't necessarily because Animal Crossing is any less serious. It's probably just because the game values things like comfort, routine, and a play to relax rather than necessarily compete. And Animal Crossing kind of defined that space years before any terms like cozy gaming existed. And I think Nintendo understands how important that is, and they want to tap into it, because franchises like Metroid, Mario Kart, and Donkey Kong will always drive hype cycles, they'll sell systems, they'll generate big headlines, but when you look at the numbers themselves, Animal Crossing is absolutely essential for Nintendo to connect with the other half of their player base, the people who don't necessarily live and breathe gaming news, but still want a meaningful experience on the platform. Animal Crossing New Horizons proved that beyond a doubt, pulling in millions of players who might never touch a speedrun or play Overwatch Ranked or something like that, but they found themselves pouring hours into decorating an island or visiting friends. And I think Animal Crossing has evolved into something bigger than just a game Nintendo happens to make, but it's more, like a strategic anchor to Nintendo making money, which is probably Nintendo's most important thing to them, as Animal Crossing has evolved into something that keeps their brand kind of relevant across a broad spectrum of players, and it ensures Nintendo consoles feel like a home, not just for gaming adrenaline, but also maybe for comfort. I think it's worth noting that Animal Crossing's role does kind of differ from Pokemon, which is another franchise that crosses demographics across the board, because Pokemon reaches a broad spectrum of players as well, because the game's both accessible for anyone to play, but it can be competitive as well, and it's a brand that can speak to new kids picking up gaming for the first time, long-term hardcore fans of Animal Crossing, or just someone randomly being like, I've heard of this franchise, I want to try it out. Animal Crossing, on the other hand, is a little bit less about battles and more about belonging in a weird sense, where Pokemon connects players through competition and collecting. Animal Crossing kind of connects them through a sense of community. I think it was really cool when Animal Crossing New Horizons was at its height, the amount of interaction the community had, the whole buying and selling community, places like Nookazon, people trying to sell turnips at other people's islands. It was a whole infrastructure set up for that. It was a wild time for sure. I think it's important to note that Pokemon also does serve as a bridge to reach more players, but they're kind of different corners in this outer alternate gaming audience. I think it's funny to look back now because Animal Crossing wasn't always treated like the crown jewel it really is today. During the City Folk era on the Nintendo Wii, the series definitely felt more like a side project, something Nintendo cared about for sure, I guess, but not at the same level as their core franchises, where this is the game of the Nintendo Wii. Animal Crossing City Folk doesn't reinvent the formula so much as it kind of extends what they were already doing, and while it was still charming, you could tell Nintendo wasn't trying to push the boundaries as to what was possible with Animal Crossing. Now, for me, the game still meant a lot. City Folk was actually probably the last thing that kept me playing my Nintendo Wii after 2009, because I was 14 at the time, and by then, my gaming life had already shifted to the Xbox 360, because I had Xbox 360, Xbox Live, and Call of Duty World at War. What more did a 14-year-old teenager need? And the Wii was kind of starting to hit its goofy peak. I mean, the amount of shovelware on there, those like mini game type games, you know, the party gimmick games, it was, you know, a weird time. But City Folk was like, yes, I know what this game is, and I know I like it. And, you know, even though the Wii's magic was starting to wear off for me, Animal Crossing kept me coming back, at least for a little while longer than what my experience with the Wii would have been otherwise. And City Folk was kind of the end of the old Animal Crossing era, because after City Folk, the series would start to shift into becoming a core, valued property of Nintendo. But I do think for many people, Animal Crossing City Folk coming out kind of at the middle of the Wii's life kept some people playing the Wii a little bit longer than what they maybe otherwise would have. But it also depended, because if you were a younger player, you probably stuck with the Wii longer anyways. But I had an Xbox 360 and Call of Duty World at War, later Modern Warfare 2. I was done with the Wii. After City Folk launched, you could tell Nintendo was at least starting to give Animal Crossing a little bit more love. It wasn't getting a full roster character in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. They definitely weren't getting any representation as a character in Smash Bros. Yet. But it did get a stage, and even background music put in the game. You know, it was something. At least it was like a little acknowledgement of Animal Crossing existing. At the time, just seeing the town represented in a game like Super Smash Bros. Definitely made it feel like, hey, Nintendo's celebrating this game existing. And that was pretty cool. Now, in the years leading up to New Leaf, I actually did go back and buy Wild World one more time for the original DS because I had lost my original cartridge. So I picked up a used copy from GameStop, which was way overpriced, but nostalgia won. Do you blame me? Even though I knew I was replaying something old, it was cool to kind of dip back into the portable version after a few years off from the Wii version. That said, my sights were very much locked on New Leaf that was getting close to launching at the time. And when Animal Crossing New Leaf finally did release, it was a huge step. Suddenly, you weren't just a villager. You were the mayor. The one change alone made the game feel so much more personal and empowering. And on top of that, the list of new features was massive. There was all these new shops, there was public works projects, this island you could go to, there was later Dream Suite. There was just a lot of cool things added to this game, and New Leaf finally felt like Nintendo was like, okay, Animal Crossing just isn't a side project anymore. This is one of our big franchises, and you can tell how much this game has evolved compared to previous entries in the Animal Crossing series. And after New Leaf dropped, suddenly Animal Crossing wasn't treated like a side project anymore either. It was everywhere. There was Animal Crossing Plaza on the Wii U, a Mario Kart 8 map and character representation. Villager was added into the new Super Smash Bros. Game, and then later on Isabelle was put into Super Smash Bros. Animal Crossing New Leaf got the giant Welcome Amiibo update years after its launch. Happy Home Designer came out of the 3DS. Amiibo Festival on the Wii U released. RIP. There was Pocket Camp on mobile, and merchandise was really starting to blow up. There were plushies and other types of collaborations in the works back then. I mean, there was like a 7-Eleven crossover in Japan. There was the Hello Kitty and Sanrio crossover. There was crossover things popping up in other games like Monster Hunter or even Mario Maker. And things would continue to ramp up with Animal Crossing becoming more and more relevant in Nintendo's lineup. And that's something worth looking into. If there was ever any doubt about Animal Crossing's place in Nintendo's lineup, Animal Crossing New Horizons probably erased it almost overnight. The game wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural event. Now, it launched right at the beginning of 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, and it instantly became this massive digital access point for like tens of millions of people. Islands were no longer just like game saves. These were like literal escapes, island getaways, dare I say. Animal Crossing was like pushing into the mainstream. There were celebrities playing the game, so many news articles about different things happening in Animal Crossing, whether it was like dates, weddings, talk show sets, and at least for a little while, Nintendo backed this game up pretty well. Now, for a company that's sometimes a little bit hesitant to keep supporting games long-term, New Horizons at least got some stream of updates, which was nice. The big one being the Happy Home Paradise expansion, which was like kind of a full game in the game itself with new features tying it to the 2.0 and Brewster and all those other cool things that happened. And while the content drought for Animal Crossing has been rough, even years later, Animal Crossing Crossing New Horizons hasn't fully faded into the background. Now, of course, we mentioned earlier, sales numbers are over 40 million copies, which puts it right behind Mario Kart 8 Deluxe as one of the best-selling Nintendo games of all time, but it still continues to hold cultural relevance too. And once again, we can compare it to Nintendo's main games, their tentpole games, Mario, Zelda, and Pokemon, but I think Animal Crossing really reaches that audience that Nintendo doesn't want to risk losing. I was really excited for Animal Crossing New Horizons to release, and I was counting down the days for that release, but my wife, on the other hand, hadn't really had a whole lot of experiences with that many video games at all. I mean, she was dabbling around with Fortnite and enjoying it, and we also played some Sea of Thieves that was pretty fun, but when she was able to give Animal Crossing a go on my Switch, that changed everything. All of a sudden, it was like I wanted to play Animal Crossing, but I couldn't get on because she was playing Animal Crossing for quite a long time, and I was sitting around waiting to play. Fortunately, I had a friend who was selling his Nintendo Switch during a time where Nintendo Switches were hard to get your hands on, and there was a bunch of markups, but my friend wasn't marking his price up, so he gave me a fair price. I bought it from him, he mailed it to me, and then my wife Sandy was able to get her own island, and we power coupled our way through months and months of Animal Crossing, and it was a blast. We had this whole rose business through Nookazon, where she was growing these gold roses. I would come over and help water the flowers, because if you have someone else from a different island water your flowers, you have a higher rate of success when you're breeding different types of flowers together. We were doing the turnip exchange. We were at that game for probably way too long. Each of us easily eclipsed over 1,500 hours in Animal Crossing New Horizons over the years, and I have zero regrets. And I think that ties into us looking to the future of Animal Crossing as well, because where does it actually go from here? If history tells us anything, it's not going to go away. Nintendo has finally realized what fans already knew. Animal Crossing shouldn't just be a quirky side project, it's one of their most powerful brands, and New Horizons didn't just sell well, it became a cultural moment, and one of those rare games that kind of, in a way, partially defined the era during the whole pandemic. I'm pretty sure Animal Crossing is going to be a part of the conversation soon when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2. It's too important to ignore, it's a system seller, and also you notice how a lot of other games were kind of released with new versions, like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, they got Switch 2 enhancements, Kirby's getting some DLC, Mario Party. A lot of these games that are really big for Nintendo either got an enhanced version or a straight up sequel in the case of Mario Kart. Not Animal Crossing New Horizons, interestingly enough, which makes me think we're closer than we might realize to something new being announced. Or maybe at the time you're watching this, they've already announced it, which would be great. Now, I think New Horizons does point something important out, in that hardcore fans won't be satisfied with just a slightly enhanced version of the same formula. People are going to expect Nintendo to really build this out to a bigger platform, because there was, some features that didn't make their way into New Horizons that were there in New Leaf, and fans noticed. And I think Nintendo is going to need to keep that in mind with the next game after this, and I think Nintendo will continue to keep Animal Crossing relevant during the non-game era that we're in right now. I mean, there's weird Animal Crossing holographic concert events that they did to promote Splatoon. Animal Crossing's still there, and I think that is a big deal. Before Animal Crossing was this global franchise, before Isabelle plushies lined Nintendo stores, before New Horizons sold 40 million copies, it was just this strange little idea on the Nintendo 64 called Animal Forest, or Dobutsu no Mori, and it launched in Japan in 2001, right at the end of the Nintendo 64's life. It wasn't flashy, it didn't have boss fights or dungeons, and on paper, this was the kind of project that easily could have been dismissed. Matter of fact, the game didn't really even sell all that well on the Nintendo 64. And they only released it in Japan originally. Nonetheless, Nintendo still greenlit the idea, and that decision to take a chance on this quiet, experimental game about living in a village with animal neighbors ended up kind of establishing something that would become massive. That risk created a franchise that has outlived generations of hardware, carried Nintendo through cultural moments, and now kind of stands with Mario, Zelda, and Pokemon as some of the most important pillars of Nintendo themselves. What's wild is how true the series has stayed to that original spirit too. Animal Forest was always about slowing down, existing in a shared space, and finding joy in little things like fishing or shaking trees. Decades later, even with all the updates, crossovers, and DLC, that same DNA is a part of Animal Crossing still. And now looking forward, Animal Crossing has the biggest potential it's ever had. Bigger than the N64 experiment, bigger than Wild World on the DS with the handheld stuff. That was big. Bigger than the global phenomenon that New Horizons was. The franchise has grown from this risk that that Nintendo kind of threw out for players to try out into like this powerful cultural force. And with that gamble Nintendo made, decades later, it's still paying off. The same spirit of Animal Forest, slowing down, connecting with neighbors, and finding joy in these little things or whatever, is kind of what keeps the series alive today. And sometimes I think about that when I look at our channel here. We started making Animal Crossing content well after New Horizons hype had already cooled down quite a bit. And yet, here we are, just past 100,000 subscribers. That has to mean something, right? I think it means that this franchise still matters. It means that this audience that resonates with Animal Crossing is definitely still there and interested in engaging in Animal Crossing discussions, and Animal Crossing has more life ahead of it than ever before. And all of this just kind of sparked from a single Nintendo 64 experiment. And now Isabelle's kind of Nintendo royalty, and honestly, I think she's only a Mario Kart spinoff away from maybe running the company herself. Thanks for watching.